Okay, so I want to get this started. Um, we're gonna start with the crypto news. All right. Okay, so we got ECB raises benchmark rate by 75 BPS and tones down long-term refinancing operations. Okay, so all right, so this is Bitcoin.com. Okay, on Thursday, the European Central Bank announced the central bank's third consecutive benchmark bank rate increase this year, raising the rate by 75 basis points. In addition to the rate hike, the ECB changed the central bank's targeted long-term refinancing operations terms and conditions, noting that they need to be recalibrated. Okay, so they're doing the same thing the Federal Reserve is doing, raising their interest rates, just like the Federal Reserve did earlier this year. Okay, ECB hikes rate in an attempt to curb red hot inflation. Okay, 8 days ago, the European Union Statistics Office Eurostat published the latest inflation report for September. Eurostat's records indicated that euro area annual inflation jumped to 9.9% in September, the highest in 40 years. A week later, the European Central Bank and the central bank's president, Christine Lagarde, hiked up the benchmark bank rate for the third time in a row. Okay. The rate was increased by 75 BPS, and the terms and conditions for targeted longer term refinancing operations, TLTROs, will be changed and adjusted as of November 23rd. The ECB said that the TLTROs played an important role during the COVID-19 pandemic, and now the refinancing operations need an adjustment. During the acute phase of the pandemic, this instrument played a key role in countering downside risk to price stability, the ECB stressed. Okay. The central bank added today, in view of the unexpected and extraordinary rise in inflation, it needs to be recalibrated in order to align the remuneration of minimum reserves held by credits institutions with the euro system more closely with money market conditions. The governing council decided to set the remuneration of minimum reserves at the ECB's deposit facility rate. Okay. Central banks across the globe are attempting to see how they can gauge the deposit facility rate and curb inflation at the same time. Most of the central banks have been lagging behind the U.S. Federal Reserve, which is expected to raise the federal funds rate by 75 BPS next month. Okay. Slowly but surely, as it's an indicator with significant lag, the Europeans' higher borrowing rates or cost of lending increases across the nation's financial industry. With the ECB raising the rate by 75 BPS, the higher borrowing costs will affect all the market participants in the European Union going forward. For instance, EU mortgage rates tapped a 7-year high this month as they jumped a full percentage point by the end of August. All right, so you know, that's your financial news for today. Um, I wanted to go ahead and, you know, get that on there. And I think I might want to talk about this a little bit too. It might be worth it. Okay, it's about China, trade restrictions, and possible Taiwan invasion. Okay, this is potentially, um, um, you know, important economic data. Okay, so 257 economists say global recession is near. U.S. trade restrictions against China could stir Taiwan invasion. So they're blaming this. Like in this article, they're blaming the U.S. for the tensions. Okay, it's U.S. trade restrictions against China could stir Taiwan invasion. Okay. According to 257 economists polled by Reuters, the global economy is approaching a recession, but 70%. Okay. We're already in a recession. We've been in a recession since the beginning of this year, especially in the trucking industry. Okay. In the trucking industry, we've been in a recession since early this year. Okay. So, once again, this is my issue with a lot of the media online is they've been lying about this recession for a long time. They've been downplaying it. Oh, we're nearing a recession. We've been in a recession. He was in a recession all summer with the gas prices and stuff. We've been in a freight recession for since the beginning of 2022. Okay, so what the hell are they talking about? We've been in this stuff. This stuff has been going on. Okay. Okay, of the survey's participants believe the chances of a sharp rise in unemployment levels will be low. The poll follows the Biden administration and the U.S. Commerce Department issuing a package of trade restrictions against China's relationship with the semiconductor industry. The tensions between the U.S. and China have given observers reason to believe that China could invade Taiwan, okay, in the near future. Accounts stemming from the 20th Communist Party Congress, CCP, conference note that Xi Jinping reportedly discussed completing the country's control over Hong Kong, and Taiwan is next. Okay. Polled economists believe global economy draws closer to a recession. Robobank market analyst says it's pretty much a no-brainer. Okay, the world's economy looks gloomy following the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic response and the recent tensions between major nation states. On a global level, inflation has skyrocketed in every country, and rising energy costs tied to financial sanctions and the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war have made things a lot worse. On October 25th, Reuters, the news agency owned by Thomson Reuters, published a poll that consisted of 257 economists, and a majority of the individuals believe the global economy is approaching a recession. Okay. A global strategist of Robobank, Michael Every, told Reuters that the risk of a global recession is at the forefront of everyone's conversation, but we've been in a recession. Okay. I think that's pretty much a no-brainer when you look at the trend in all the key economies. Every said, moreover, Every further added that if unemployment remains strong, it gives central banks like the U.S. federal government reserve ammo to raise rates. The longer the jobless rate stays stronger, then more central banks will feel that they can continue to hike rates. Every remarked. Okay. 70% of the economists polls that the chances of a hike in unemployment were low to very low. The poll's data that started on September 26th and through October 25th is a downgraded outlook compared to the states Reuters recorded in July. Global growth is forecast to slow to 2.3% in 2023 from an expected 2.9% this year, followed by a rebound to 3% in 2024, according to Reuters polls of economists covering 47 key economies taken September 26th to October 25th. The news agency's reporter Harry Kashan wrote, as far as China, the second largest economy, is concerned, the polled economists say the country is expected to grow 3.2% in 2022. Okay. U.S. tensions with China elevate. New export controls on China's chip industry have assured an invasion of Taiwan. Okay. The Reuters poll comes at a time when tensions have been extremely elevated between the United States and China. When the American representative from California, Nancy Pelosi, visited Taiwan in August, the meeting was considered disrespectful to China. At the time, the White House said China is preparing to carry out military provocations while Chinese warships practice military drills in the Taiwan Strait. Earlier this week, the U.S. government charged 2 Chinese intelligence officers for bribing a government employee with Bitcoin to access classified documents. Okay. On October 7, 2022, the U.S. Commerce Department initiated and crafted a package of semiconductor-related trade restrictions against China. The New York Times reported that the White House issued sweeping restrictions on selling semiconductors and chip-making equipment to China in an attempt to curb the country's access to critical technologies. Emily Kilcrease, a senior fellow at the think tank called the Center for a New American Security, told the NYT the move was an aggressive approach by the U.S. government to really impair the capability of China to indigenously develop certain of these critical technologies. Okay. The latest crackdown on China by the United States has caused, and let me just stop right there. See, China has a really, if you do the research, China has a really hard time developing their own microchips. Okay, this is why all the microchips are made by TSMC in Taiwan. They have a real, because of the structure of the Chinese economy and their government, a microchip industry, a semiconductor industry can't really thrive in China like that. You know what I mean? So they have to, you know what I mean? They're going to have to they have to import their chips and stuff from Taiwan. That's the real reason they want to take Taiwan. People think it's because of political reasons, because of the, Chiang Kai-shek back in World War II and all that stuff. But in reality, it's the semiconductor industry that is in Taiwan. And the Taiwanese are very smart people, and they're really good at making those microchips and stuff. And they've really innovated in that industry for a number of decades. So China wants to take control of that. That's their first objective. You know what I mean? They're talking about military they're talking about military, drills and stuff in the Taiwan Strait. That's been going on for a number of years, though, I believe. You know what I mean? That's not something that's new. Okay, but we'll continue. The latest crackdown on China by the United States has caused a number of people to believe the country will invade Taiwan. Capitalist exploits contributor Chris McIntosh explained that the Biden administration adding new export controls on China's chip industry has just assured an invasion of Taiwan. McIntosh also spoke about the 20th CCP conference and noted that China's president Xi Jinping said control of Hong Kong is now complete and that Taiwan is next. McIntosh is not the only person that thinks China will invade Taiwan. As the Sri Lankan geopolitical blogger Danuka Dikwella thinks an invasion could happen this winter. Okay, so they're going to invade in the winter. Going to invade Taiwan in the winter. That's when the isn't that when the seas are going to be the most rough in the wintertime? When isn't that monsoon season over there in Southeast Asia? I believe that's when you're going to have the worst weather, the most rain, and that's when you want to invade Taiwan. You know what I mean? You would think that they would plan an invasion in the summertime when they have the best weather, but but they're talking about doing it in the wintertime. So in a recent blog post, Dikwella also mentioned the well-documented CCP conference and the forceful removal of China's former president, Hu Jintao. Hu Jintao's forceful removal from the party Congress for the eyes of the whole world thus represents the departure of those approaches. Dikwella said on October 22, the approach of working closely with the West as well as trusting on negotiations for settling the dispute with Taiwan will effectively come to an end. On Tuesday, JP Morgan boss Jamie Dimon said tensions between the U.S. and China and the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war are far more concerning than a recession. Okay, so there you go. There you have it. And hold on. Okay, and so I'm going to shut that off real quick, and I want to spend a little time as well today talking about Africa a little bit. I did the financial news. I did the Bitcoin. I did the talking about China and all that stuff. But especially on these broadcasts and stuff going forward, I want to dedicate a certain amount of time talking about Africa as well, because as a Black person in the diaspora, it's very important to me. Talking about Africa, that kind of thing. is very crucial to me. I think that as someone who at some point, at some time, would like to have a footprint on the continent in Africa. I would like to own property over there. I would like to have some business assets over there. And as someone who has that mindset, it's very important to me, because we can sit around here all day and talk about what's going on in the West and how China and the US hate each other and can't stand each other and blah, blah, blah. But I think that there's far more crucial things in the world for Black folks, especially, to talk about, and I think I want to talk about, hold on. All right, I may talk a little gentrification as well. Okay, so new tab to the right. I may talk a little bit about gentrification as well. I may do a little gentrification. I may get into it a little bit. Okay. Hold on. All right. Okay. Cool. All right. All right. So that's cool. And okay. So we got going on here. And, now Botswana, that's one of the most stable, African states. That's one of the most stable African countries. And I think that as Black Americans who are looking to invest in Africa, we might want to consider Botswana, because there's a lot of other people on here talked about Africa for years on here. One of them is Holopsism. And Holopsism, I guess you could say he's a, oh no, I guess you could say he's a cool dude. Hold on. I watched a little bit of one of his I'm gonna look at his channel a little bit too. Okay. All right, so here is Holopsism, and Holopsism, the dude has been around for years. Okay, he's been around for years. He's been around since I want to say at least 2010, because I used to go over there. I used to watch his program back in 2010. At that time, I considered a very new and innovative, platform, because I kind of looked at it like, okay, here's this brother. He's talking about Africa. He's talking about investing in Africa. He's talking about going to Africa and that kind of thing. And at one point, I think he was dead set on going to Africa, but I think something happened with his family in about 2015 or something like that. I think he had mentioned that his mother passed away or something like that. So he ended up not going to Africa. But he did go with a number of his followers, of a number of his people that follow him a few years ago. I think they went to Rwanda. And I think they said they had a good time over there too. So I think they visited Rwanda, and they did some things over there. Okay, but as far as the brother having like a really strong foothold over there, I think that he has yet to really establish that. And then most of his stuff, you really look at a lot of his material, it's not okay. Most of his stuff is him talking about America. It's not even, or other people in America. It's not even really, him talking about Africa. Most of him is just talking about America, criticizing America, or criticizing, people like Cornel West, and people criticizing other Black Americans, for their views or things that they have said or stuff like that. So I don't really follow his stuff because a lot of it, he doesn't really talk a lot about economics or business or trade or stuff like that. So I don't really follow a lot of his stuff. Now he talked about, Kanye West and what's her name? Candace Owens with the White Lives Matter shirts and stuff. Like he talks about stuff like that. Like he's more interested in criticizing other people that don't agree with him or have a contrary viewpoint than what he has, rather than actually even talking about Africa. I mean, he brings the Africa stuff up as like an ideological thing, but a lot of times he doesn't even really delve into Africa like that. And I just, as a result, I don't really take him all the way serious, to be honest with you. As a result, that's just how I feel. That's just how I feel about it. So that being said, I want to get to the Botswana stuff. So hold on. I want to get to the Botswana stuff. And up until recently, I just realized, just from research and stuff, why, that Botswana is one of the most stable African nations. Now, and I just realized that, and I've been researching other countries like Namibia and Ghana and stuff like that too. But I just realized, how crucial Botswana really is. Because of its stability. In fact, it's had, I don't think it's even had any civil wars in their history. I think they had a couple of issues back in the 60s between a couple of the leaders and stuff, but they was able to get past that without a civil war. And they're one of the most stable, politically stable countries, economically stable countries. And I wanted to research more into how economically viable they are. Like, is it a good idea to go there and start a business? Is it a good idea to go there? You know what I mean? And is it a good idea to go there and try to, to try to get stuff popping over there? Because if it is, and it's a viable choice, then I may consider Okay, what does it take to buy land over there? What does it take to have a business over there? Okay. And we got this 2019 article. This is this article, okay, from Palladium magazine. Okay, what Botswana can teach us about political stability. Okay, it's hard to find a clear outlier among developing countries than Botswana, a landlocked African country where 40% of government revenue comes from diamond mining and a quarter of adults are HIV positive. Everything taught by a development economics department would suggest the country is set up for failure, but well executed succession between presidents and the resulting stability and good government has meant success instead. Botswana is possibly the nicest place in Africa. It is quieter and more stable than, say, Greece. In the entire period since independence, Botswana has not suffered devastating civil wars like those in the Congo or Mozambique, coups such as in Burkina Faso, or ethnic violence and expropriation as seen in Rwanda and Zimbabwe. Okay. The country's living standards are comparable to Turkey, Mexico, and South Africa. It has also been sub-Saharan Africa's fastest growing economy for most of the last half century. Okay. And I thought it was Nigeria. If you ask Nigerians, they'll tell you that Nigeria is Africa's fastest growing economy. I didn't know that Botswana, you know, was that their economy was fast growing like that, and that their standard of living is comparable to places like Mexico and other Turkey and other South Africa and other fastly developing nations. Okay, but it says, okay, the crucial variable is a sound government making well-informed long-term choices. A low population density paired with abundant natural resources provides a reasonable standard of living even in the absence of administrative genius or favorable conditions, so long as governance provides stability. Political instability can impede development of physical infrastructure and the business environment, transforming good fundamentals into a bad outcome. See, for example, Kazakhstan compared to Venezuela. Okay. Unfortunately, there are many examples of countries that have tried and failed to achieve good governance in the often chaotic post-colonial context. These countries followed Western advice as closely as they could, drafting legally impeccable constitutions and recruiting well-educated statesmen, but the results have been mixed at best. Botswana's positive outlier example raises the question of how it has done so well. Good government starts with good leadership. Here is the list of heads of state of Botswana over the last 100 years. Okay. King Kama III, who reigned from 1875 to 1923, decided to join the British Empire. President Seretse Khama, the grandson of Kama III, led the effort to leave the British Empire. He held office for 14 years from 1966 to 1980. Okay, President Get Mazir served as Seretse Khama's vice president. He held office for 18 years from 1980 to 1998. Okay, President Festus Mogae served as COT Mazir's vice president. He held office for 10 years from 1998 to 2008. Okay. President Ian Khama, son of Seretse Khama, great-grandson of King Khama III, served as Festus Mogae's vice president. He held office for 10 years from 2008 to 2018. And then President Magwitsi Masisi served as Ian Khama's vice president and is the current president since 2018. Okay, given these clear personal, political, and familial ties between the heads of state, it seemed that Botswana is actually an unofficial adoptive monarchy around the old royal family, quite similar to the case of the Roman Empire, where the head of state picks a successor and gives him the junior position. So it always amazes me how these African states, all right, it always amazes me how these African states are able to they're able to retain stability for long periods of time like this with the same leader in power. Okay, you got the same president for 20 years, but you can still maintain stability. Where, like in the U.S., especially in the West, they have this idea that you have to change leaders every 4 years or 8 years. We have to change presidents every 4 years to 8 years. Why not? If you have a president and he's good and he's keeping the country stable, why not? Why fix something that's broke? That's not broke. Why not let him stay in power and keep the country stable so that the country can keep moving forward decade after decade and keep it, advancing and growing? Why is it that, and it's the West that has this mindset that you have to constantly change up your leadership every year, every 4 years, every 8 years, and all that does is just give opportunities for instability. It seems like, because look at what happened on January 6th. I think it was 2021. I think when they stormed the Capitol and stuff, like, that was a scary situation. And we don't know how much more of that is in store for America in the near future. Okay, because you look at America, America's having more and more problems politically, and stability wise. So, but let's continue, okay? In the paradigm of contemporary political science, such an arrangement is usually taken as a negative sign. We are used to thinking of political dynasties and close alliances among insiders to be cardinal signs of corruption. This negative association is at least somewhat the result of cherry picking. We focus on political dynasties in failed or rogue states, but minimize their very role in successful Western states. The modern West has its dynasty, most famously the Bushes and Kennedys. This is an open secret. Statistically, one of the best qualifications for being a U.S. governor is descent from one. Okay. But since America's national mythology is revolutionary and our institutions claim legitimacy from technocratic grounds of impartiality, we tend to view such dynasties negatively when we acknowledge them at all. It might be that Western states are successful in spite of such dynasties, but even then, we can't claim this is a crucial distinguishing factor between well and poorly governed states. Okay. Further, as argued by Gregory Clark in his book, The Sun Also Rises, social mobility is about the same in all societies and is much lower than we usually propose, regardless of how meritocratic a system claims to be. Power tends to remain in the same families. Okay. Since the same people tend to come up on top overall, the rough composition of the elites in a country will not be significantly different if it implements meritocratic policies or not. The key difference between functionality and dysfunctionality is in the institutional mechanism the elite use to cooperate with each other rather than just the selection or composition of elites. Okay. The arrangement we see in Botswana, where the previous head of state, publicly declared successor, solves the problem of power succession. This both helps prevent organizational scoliosis and render succession conflicts unlikely. Many post-colonial states struggle with the problem of succession. Civil wars and coups are endemic. It is open to discussion how much of this is the result of internally driven miscoordination and how much is due to destabilizing foreign interventions, especially during the Cold War. But at least some of the instability is internally driven. Okay. Botswana avoided Cold War-driven instabilities by aligning with the West, but positioning itself such that the USSR had no interest in overthrowing it. Botswana was a thorn in the side of South Africa and useful to the USSR by sometimes allowing the communist-aligned ANC to operate in its territory. The Soviets may have worried that a revolution would simply result in a South African invasion. Thus, the only communists active in Botswana politics were small Maoist and Trotskyist groups. Okay. So other countries have disunified elites, okay, possibly as a result of foreign interference. Contrast with the relative high trust that exists between elites in Botswana. In various countries around the world, there is rivalry between civilian and military leadership. When trust and coordination are low, the military and civilian government distrust each other, and there's no simple bridge between the two. For example, the Communist Party of China may not wish to allow the People's Liberation Army to become too independent or strong, since this would make a a coup viable. Okay, in such situations, if the military remains an effective organization, ambition will often be stated by directly deploying the military to subordinate the civilian government and make war on the elites in control of it. At best, this results in a coup, at worst, a civil war. Okay. Ian Kama resigning from the military before entering civilian politics rather than using the position of general to install himself directly, however, is an example of the way military leaders can acquire political power without setting a precedent for coups. One of the key variables in determining whether a country has a coup is how many coups it has had in the past. It further demonstrates a degree of coordination and deal keeping among elites. There is a direct analogy here to the practice of successful U.S. generals who became president, such as George Washington, Ulysses Grant, and Dwight D. Eisenhower. That military leaders can rise to power through the civilian government demonstrates a high level of trust among Botswanan elites absent in most third world states. Okay. Historically, in another feat of competent political strategy, Botswana joined the British Empire on its own terms under King Kama III, preserving its autonomy. The tribal structure continued to govern during the colonial period, building its own bureaucracy. This means the current state stands on an actual base of power rather than being a legal fiction. Okay. Moreover, compared to other African states, Botswana has a relatively homogeneous ethnic makeup with a single dominant tribe, the Swana. This helps stability because it means the tribal power structure and the formal government structure are one and the same in practice, reducing motivation or opportunity for political conflict. Okay. So that's another thing is they have one dominant ethnic group for the most part, and that has contributed to a lot of their stability. Okay. And the demographic fundamentals are not perfect, however, as Amy Chua described in her book World on Fire. One of the most important drivers of civil war, expropriation, genocide is the dynamic of conflict between an ethnic majority with an economically dominant minority. The political conflicts between the Hutu and the Tutsi in Rwanda are canonical example. Okay, superficially, the conditions in Botswana are present for the development of such a scenario. A significant minority of the population, around 3%, is white. This minority has substantial social and material capital, and yet it continues to exist with few problems after half a century of independence, with no campaign of expropriation or expulsion, unlike countries such as Uganda. Okay. What is the source of this rare good fortune? It seems it was a good judgment by the ruling dynasty. Seretse Khama pursued independence in a much smarter way that had been done in countries like Zimbabwe. For example, his government bought half of the local branch of the International De Beers Corporation rather than seizing it. Okay, so they bought half of the local branch of the International De Beers Corporation, and they didn't seize it. So they allow the power to transition smoothly instead of abruptly. So it says seizure is disruptive and often destroys a company's ability to produce as the best managers and engineers flee while purchase ensures continuity and continued production. Okay. Income from taxing or owning shares of such large companies can be used for patronage of political allies. Shirley Akama served as CEO of De Beers Botswana, as well as social programs to develop state power further. This reduces the pool of alternative institutions such as clans, radical religious groups, and ideological organizations. Another well-known example of this tactic is Saudi Arabia's use of the Saudi Aramco oil company. Okay, retaining the friendship of the world's diamond monopolists doesn't hurt the important foreign policy necessity of maintaining good relations with Western powers. Further, not cooking the goose that lays diamond eggs makes expropriation measures aimed at prosperous minorities less attractive in the long run, as there is less financial need to do so. Expropriating De Beers might have interfered with its ability to maintain its monopoly and thus high diamond prices, rendering the spoils much less valuable anyway. Okay. Simply looking at a picture of former President Ian Khama reveals that the most prosperous ethnicity married into the traditional royal family. Okay, the marriage of President Siriti Kama, Ian's father, was controversial at the time, likely an act of love rather than intentional statecraft. However, it was read by the white minority as a credible commitment to ethnic peace. Because of these obvious and noticeable family ties, the political capital of the influential Kama family cannot be shored up by inflaming inter-ethnic conflict for political gain, as was done by Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe and Idi Amin in Uganda. The family is thus reassuring for the white minority while simultaneously legitimate to traditionalist Tswana. In government aligns political necessity with prosperity. When political necessity steps in the way of prosperity, it is prosperity that suffers. Ethnic conflict can sometimes be politically useful, but is economically and socially harmful. The marriage decision made any such conflict politically more costly and less useful, just as the partnership with De Beers turned economic capital, which could otherwise only be wastefully burned for political capital, into an ongoing source of political support. Okay. Okay. Plenty of, all right. Um, Okay, so plenty of autocrats at least try to name their successor. Botswana succeeds where they fail by prudent use and promotion of good fundamentals that make succession crisis and intra elite conflict much less likely. Trust between military and civilian elites, exemplified by Ian Khama retiring from the military to go into civilian politics, means there's no point in a coup. The formal government being effectively the tribal power structure of the dominant tribe, with the tribal royal family holding political office, means little sheer can arise between government and ethnic power centers. Okay, the relatively homogeneous economy centered around De Beers, which is well integrated via the government's ownership stake, reveals a single point of financial patronage that is aligned with government interests. Furthermore, good positioning through the Cold War meant to foreign power had interest in toppling the Botswana. Meant no foreign power had interest in toppling the Botswanan government. Okay, according to conventional development economics models, Botswana shouldn't be doing as well as it is. As a landlocked country, its access to international markets relies on neighboring states. This is commonly recognized as an important barrier to development, with its own acronym LLDC, Landlocked Developing Country. It is suffering among the world's AIDS pandemics. This not only incurs significant direct medical expense, but also lowers productivity. Morbidity drives up the dependency ratio, depriving it of demographic dividend. Lastly, it is a post colonial state. The norm for this reference class is corruption, political instability, and unexceptional growth. Together, these factors should have sealed its fate. Okay. But our usual models do not sufficiently account for the difficulty and importance of succession. We model power and power succession unrealistically, if at all. Handpicked successors in political dynasties are overlooked as viable solutions or regarded as a sign of corruption. Thus, we usually miss or shrug at Botswana's success and likewise miss some of the key sources of functionality in our own governments. Okay. The world, including its functional governments, is a lot more dynastic than we like to admit, and dynasties work a lot better at securing institutional continuity and good government than we like to think. As we look into what's actually working about the American order and how it could work better, we should pay close attention to cases where dynasties like the Commas are a significant driving force of success. We would do well to become more comfortable with their role. Okay, so I find all that very interesting, you know. And Palladium magazine looks like a really good source. You know, so you know, so very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. And I'm not saying I agree with everything with this with their viewpoint, but they seem to have articles that are very interesting about different things. going on in the world. So, with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and hang it up for right now. Let me know what y'all think. Um, leave comments, of course. Get the likes up. I'm gonna hit you guys back with another live. If not today, then probably early tomorrow. But let me know what y'all think. Peace.